regional clans in the Russian Federation have sensed the weakness of the federal center, will try to strengthen their positions and get rid of their dependence on Moscow. This could trigger the process of Russia's disintegration. This was stated during a chat on Glavred by the former head of the Luhansk Military Civil Administration and Deputy Minister for Temporarily Occupied Territories and Internally Displaced Persons in 2016 to 2019, Georgy Tuka. I don't believe in the possibility of a revolution in Russia. I call the good Russians temporary fellow travelers because we now have one common enemy, Putin. But our strategic goal is to achieve the disintegration of Russia, and theirs is to preserve Russia in its current form, simply to put another Putin at its head, he said. He was also skeptical about the possibility of a civilizational revolution in the country, noting that a riot is more likely to be expected both in Moscow and in the regions. In particular, he noted the difficult situation in the North Caucasus and instability in Siberia, which the Russian Federation itself prefers not to talk about. Tuka also acknowledged the possibility of unpredictable black swan events that could change the situation in the country, but noted that further military and financial support for Ukraine could have negative domestic consequences for Russia. I emphasized that we are talking about regions. After all, there is the concept of regional elites. Believe me, in a territory of unknown size and the population density is lower than in the Sahara Desert, the influence of the Vladivostok clan on life in the Far East is incomparable with the influence of the Moscow clan, Tuka said. He noted that as soon as regional clans sense the weakness of the federal center, they will gladly make every effort to be in first place, not second. After all, for any regional elite, it is always more advantageous to be a leader in their region than to yield to someone in the overall hierarchy. It's clear that even if the Kremlin wanted to turn to its divide and rule policies, that would be difficult. In the 2000s, Moscow was able to punish regional heavyweights by moving them to junior posts, but it can't do that with technocrats. Not only is there nothing to punish them for, but they often have friends in high places who will intercede on their behalf. The resulting compromise is that officials are being kept in governorships by lengthy periods of time. While governors are seeing their hopes of a top job in Moscow dashed, the Kremlin has to reconcile itself to the emergence of a new group of feudal lords in the Russian regions.
Elon Musk has long railed against the U.S. government, saying a crushing number of federal investigations and safety programs have stymied Tesla, his electric car company, and its efforts to create self-driving automobiles. Now, Musk's close relationship with President Donald J. Trump means many of those federal headaches could vanish. An Associated Press review of federal probes and safety programs that are most at risk found that the Trump administration could quickly nix crash investigations into Tesla's partially automated vehicles, a U.S. Department of Justice criminal probe examining whether Musk and Tesla have overstated their cars' self-driving capabilities, and a government mandate to report crash data on vehicles using technology like Tesla's autopilot. The consequences of such actions could prove dire, say safety advocates who credit such federal investigations and recalls with saving lives. We went out and bought a car, a Model 3, and said, well, let's try it ourselves. We're going to drive it around and see what it does, said Dan O'Dowd, founder of the Dawn Project, which describes itself as campaigning to ban unsafe software from safety-critical systems. It simply failed, O'Dowd says. Drive it maybe for an hour or so, it's going to almost always fail. It's going to do something very dumb and unsafe. Let's not just call it dumb unsafe through that period of time. And that's when I said, this thing's got to come off the road. The White House and Musk began waging an unbridled war against the federal government, freezing spending and programs while sacking a host of career employees, including prosecutors and government watchdogs typically shielded from such brazen dismissals without cause. The Trump administration has not yet declared any actions that could benefit Tesla or Musk's other companies. However, snuffing out federal investigations or jettisoning safety initiatives would be much easier task than their audacious assault on regulators and the bureaucracy.
So we did some statistical analysis on the tests and looked through them and said, No, basically, as best we can tell, about every 8 minutes, it does something stupid, like drive across the yellow line or run a stoplight or run a red light or stop sign, sorry. It turns, goes right through a stop sign, doesn't look at a yield sign, tries to drive into oncoming traffic about every 8 minutes. And that's when it was like, okay, this thing's just terrible. I mean, this thing should never be on the road.
Full self-driving blows straight past a stopped school bus with its red lights flashing and stop sign extended and runs down a child-sized mannequin crossing the road.
There's a parked truck.
Oh my God.
And it just hits it.
So I commissioned some real studies to really test it. So we went out and bought a car, a Model 3, and said, well, let's try it ourselves. We're going to drive it around and see what it does. And we confirmed that it simply failed. You can drive it maybe for an hour or so. It's going to almost always fail. It's going to do something very dumb and unsafe. Let's not just call it dumb, unsafe through that period of time. And that's when I said, this thing's got to come off the road. They're basically saying, yep, we're getting sued. We lose $1 million here, $1 million there. We got $1 trillion off this product. They're valuing full self-driving at $1 trillion. So if they've got to pay off a few $2 or $5 million lawsuits, how many can they pay off in 5 million into $1 trillion? 200,000, I think. I mean, they could take 200,000 lawsuits, and it's worth it.
Where is he? Come on up here, Elon. He created the first major American car company in generations and his rocket company.
As you can see, I'm not just MAGA, I'm dark MAGA.
So this is actually a very important point that I think is not talked about enough. That laws and regulations are immortal. They don't die. Humans die, but laws and regulations can last forever. So if year after year there are more laws and regulations passed and more regulatory bodies created, eventually everything will be illegal. Now, historically, what has cleared away the cobwebs of regulation has been war. Now, we'd prefer not to have a war. So in order to have civilization function without war, you have to actively eliminate laws and regulations. So you have to have basically a garbage collection process for rules and regulations